London hides its secrets behind fog and neon, in the quiet moments between the ordinary and the deadly. Detective Inspector Alistair Finch walks those streets alone, listening to what isn't said, watching what others fail to notice, and piecing together truths most would rather ignore. He is cynical but principled, weary but unrelenting, always chasing the shadows where danger and deceit collide. In a city that forgets nothing and trusts no one, Finch knows one thing for certain: the smallest detail can change everything, and sometimes, the hunter becomes the hunted. This is the world of Alistair Finch, the detective who sees what others can't. Episode 12, A Taste for Trouble. Part 1. Finch cooked the way other men prayed. Not with drama, not with flourish, and certainly not with an audience. He cooked in silence, sleeves rolled, tie loosened but not removed, the radio turned low enough to be background rather than company. The kitchen in his narrow Maida Vale flat was barely large enough for one man to turn around without knocking his elbow, but it suited him. Everything had its place. Everything stayed where it was put. He set the chopping board square with the counter and laid out the ingredients with quiet precision: 1 onion, 1 clove of garlic, a small piece of butter, a tin of tomatoes, dried oregano, salt. Nothing clever. Nothing fashionable. Just food that knew what it was supposed to be. Outside, London moved on without him. Buses hissed past on wet streets. Somewhere, a siren flared and faded. Finch did not look toward the window. He kept his eyes on the knife. The onion came apart cleanly beneath the blade. He sliced slowly, evenly, each piece nearly identical to the last. It was not speed he valued but control. The knife made a sound he liked: soft, dull, final. No questions. No arguments. When the butter hit the pan, it melted without protest. This was the point where his shoulders always dropped. All day, Finch carried the weight of other people's chaos: lies told too late, truth spoken too early, guilt that leaked out sideways when it could no longer be contained. He listened to it, catalogued it, and filed it away until it pressed behind his eyes like a low-grade headache. Cooking was the only thing that drained it off. The heat, the repetition, the small certainties. You put the onions in, they softened. You waited. You stirred. You did not rush it. Cases were never like that. He added the onions to the pan and let them sweat, stirring only when they threatened to stick. Garlic followed, crushed under the flat of the blade, the papery skin discarded without ceremony. The smell filled the room almost immediately, warm, sharp, familiar. It reminded him of somewhere he could not quite place. A memory that belonged to a different man, perhaps. A younger one. He opened the tin of tomatoes and poured them in, listening to the hollow sound as they hit the pan. A pinch of salt. Oregano between his fingers, rubbed to wake it up. Simple. Honest. Food that didn't pretend to be anything else. The radio murmured on the counter. Late-night programming. A presenter with a calm voice, talking about traffic disruptions and a minor fire in Camden that had been extinguished without incident. Finch barely registered it. His attention stayed with the sauce as it began to thicken, bubble lazily at the edges. He tasted it with a spoon, nodded once, and turned the heat down. That was when the phone rang. He didn't answer it at first. The ringing cut through the kitchen like an accusation, sharp and insistent. Finch stared at the phone where it sat on the small table near the door. He knew, instinctively, that it was not a social call. No one rang him at this hour unless something had gone wrong. The sauce simmered. He let it go a moment longer than necessary, then turned the hob off and wiped his hands on a tea towel. "Finch," he said, lifting the receiver. "Evening, sir." The voice was young, eager, and already apologetic. A constable. Knew enough to still sound nervous when calling a detective inspector at home. "Sorry to disturb you." "You already have," Finch said mildly. "You may as well tell me why." There was a pause. Paper rustled on the other end. "We've got a situation in Hackney. Suspicious death. The responding officers think it's unusual. They always do." "Yes, sir. But this one, well. There's a kitchen involved." Finch closed his eyes. Go on. Male, mid-40s. Found in his flat. No signs of forced entry. No obvious weapon. But the scene is deliberate. There's food everywhere. Prepared food. Plated. Left out. Like he was cooking. Finch looked at the pan on his stove, at the quiet order he had just imposed on his evening. What kind of food? Another pause. Classic stuff. Roast chicken. Potatoes. Vegetables. Nothing fancy. Looks like he knew what he was doing. Finch said nothing. So? I'm on my way, Finch said, already reaching for his coat. The flat in Hackney smelled wrong. Not of decay, not yet, but of something sweeter, heavier. Cooked food left too long in a closed room. The warmth clung to the air even though the windows were open and the night pressed in from outside. Finch stood just inside the door and took it in without moving. The narrow hallway. The scuffed linoleum. A framed print on the wall that had been hung crooked and never corrected. He clocked the details automatically, his mind filing them away. Then he stepped into the kitchen. The table was set for one. A single plate sat in the center, roast chicken carved neatly, potatoes halved and buttered, green beans aligned as though someone had taken the time to care. A glass of red wine stood untouched beside it. The cutlery was placed correctly. Not obsessively. Just properly. The man lay on the floor near the counter, slumped against the cabinets. He looked peaceful in a way Finch did not like. His eyes were closed. His hands rested loosely in his lap, palms up, as though he had simply decided to sit down and not get back up. The officers hovered at a respectful distance. Who found him? Finch asked. Neighbor, one of them said. Smelled cooking earlier in the evening. When it went on too long, they knocked. No answer. Finch crouched slowly, careful not to disturb anything. He studied the man's hands. Clean. No defensive wounds. No cuts. The nails were trimmed short. Practical. Name. Henry Caldwell. Works in procurement for a catering supplier. No criminal record. Finch glanced back at the table. Did he cook often? He asked. The officer blinked. Sorry. Did he cook often? We haven't established that yet, sir. Finch straightened, his gaze sweeping the room. The knives were clean, laid out on a magnetic strip. The chopping board had been washed and put away. The sink was empty. Whoever had cooked here had done so with intention and had cleaned up as they went. That mattered. This wasn't a struggle, Finch said quietly. This was a decision. He stood and looked once more at the plated meal, untouched. Somewhere in his chest, something tightened. Outside, the night pressed in, indifferent as ever. Finch pulled his coat closer around himself, already feeling the shape of the case forming, not as a set of facts, but as a sensation. A wrongness he could taste. He thought of the sauce cooling on his stove at home, waiting patiently to be finished. And he knew, with a certainty that unsettled him, that whoever had done this understood something about ritual. About comfort. About the quiet moments people built for themselves before everything fell apart. This was not just a murder. This was personal. Episode 12, A Taste for Trouble. Part 2. Finch did not sleep well. He never claimed to sleep badly after a case began. That would have sounded indulgent, but his body knew the difference between rest and mere unconsciousness. He woke before dawn with the shape of Henry Caldwell's kitchen still arranged behind his eyes, the symmetry of the table, the untouched wine, the careful absence of mess. Ritual without reward. He dressed quietly, ate toast he barely tasted, and left the flat with the radio still off. London was pale and undecided, hovering between night and day. The street smelled faintly of rain and old bread. Instead of going straight to the yard, Finch took a detour. The cafe sat on a corner in Shepherd's Bush, unassuming in a way that discouraged trend hunters and rewarded regulars. No sign beyond the name painted directly onto the glass, Masons. Inside, the windows were fogged, the floor scuffed, and the smell of coffee had weight to it, dark, bitter, reassuring. Finch stepped in and was greeted by noise. Cutlery. Voices. Laughter. The low, constant hum of people being fed properly. About time, a voice called from behind the counter. I was starting to think you'd finally given up on civilization. Finch allowed himself the faintest smile. Isaac Mason stood behind the counter in a crisp white apron, sleeves rolled high on his forearms. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, solid, but he moved with an economy that came from decades in kitchens where wasted motion meant wasted time. His hair was threaded with grey now, his beard trimmed short. He had the look of someone who had learned patience the hard way. "You always say that," Finch said, removing his hat. "And one of these days I'll be right." Isaac poured coffee without asking and slid the mug across the counter. Finch wrapped his hands around it, absorbing the heat. "You're early," Isaac said, studying him. "Which means something's wrong." "I'm always early." "Yes, but today you're here." Finch took a sip. The coffee was good. It always was. Strong, clean, no fuss. Isaac didn't believe in disguising mistakes with milk or sugar. "I've got a case," Finch said. Isaac raised an eyebrow. "You've always got a case. This one's about food." That did it. Isaac leaned back against the counter, folding his arms. "All right. Now you've got my attention." They sat at a small table near the window. Finch ate eggs and toast. Isaac drank coffee and listened. Henry Caldwell's name came easily. Finch described the flat, the table, the care taken with the meal. He did not dramatize it. He didn't need to. Isaac filled in the gaps on his own. "Whoever cooked that knew what they were doing," Isaac said when Finch finished. "You don't plate like that by accident. That's someone who's cooked for other people. Someone who understands timing." There was no sign of struggle, Finch said. "No mess." He cleaned as he went. Isaac nodded. "That's habit. You don't learn it overnight." He worked in catering procurement. Then he lived around food, Isaac said. Suppliers, kitchens, schedules. People like that either stop cooking entirely or they double down. Sounds like Caldwell doubled down. Finch watched Isaac as he spoke. There was no sentimentality in his voice, just professional recognition. Respect. "What would you say this meal meant to him?" Finch asked. Isaac considered. "Depends. Could have been comfort. Could have been pride. Could have been a last good thing before something unpleasant." Finch's jaw tightened slightly. "That's what I'm afraid of." Isaac leaned forward. "You think he knew?" "I think he prepared." "That's not the same thing." "No," Finch agreed. "It's worse." They sat in silence for a moment, the cafe carrying on around them. A woman laughed near the door. Someone dropped a spoon. "Why are you telling me this?" Isaac asked finally. Finch met his eyes. "Because I need someone who understands kitchens. Food. The people who work in them." Isaac smiled thinly. "And because you don't trust anyone else to tell you the truth." "That too." "All right," Isaac said. "Then here's the truth. If this is about food, it's about control. Kitchens are chaos pretending to be order. Anyone who learns to master that either loves it or uses it. Uses it how? To make people feel safe, Isaac said. Or to remind them who's in charge. By mid-morning, Finch was back at the yard, the case spreading out across a whiteboard like a recipe gone wrong. Catering suppliers. Restaurants. Small-scale food businesses. Anyone Henry Caldwell had contact with beyond invoices and delivery schedules. Cindy Lawless stood near the board, arms folded, eyes sharp. "You look like you've been thinking," she said. "That never bodes well." "I spoke to a friend," Finch said. "Oh." "He agrees this wasn't random." Cindy snorted. "I didn't need a friend to tell me that." "No," Finch said mildly. "But he knows kitchens." Cindy tilted her head. You cook now? I always have. That's new. No, Finch said. You just never asked. She studied him for a beat longer than necessary, then turned back to the board. We've got something else, she said. Another body. Finch felt the room shift around him. Where? Islington. Small bistro. Owner found in the kitchen after hours. No signs of forced entry. Finch closed his eyes briefly. Food involved, he asked. Cindy hesitated. That's the thing. The kitchen was immaculate. The only thing out of place was the dish on the counter. What kind of dish? Steak. Rested properly. Finished with butter. Left untouched. Finch opened his eyes. Who was the victim? Marcus Ellery. Early 50s. Ran the place for years. Well liked. Finch's mind connected the dots with a speed that left him cold. This isn't escalation, he said quietly. It's refinement. The bistro smelled like money and effort. Finch walked through the kitchen with care, noting the order, the cleanliness. This was not the frantic tidiness of a place trying to hide something. This was pride. The steak sat on a plate near the pass, juices pooled neatly beneath it. Cooked medium rare. Perfectly. Cindy watched Finch watch the plate. You thinking what I'm thinking? She asked. Yes. That whoever did this wanted it to be right. That whoever did this understands cooking as a language, Finch said. And they're speaking to us. He thought of Isaac. Of Henry Caldwell. Of kitchens as places of trust and hierarchy. Someone's killing people who live by food, Cindy said slowly. And leaving behind meals like calling cards. Not meals, Finch said. Messages. Outside, the city went on eating, oblivious. And somewhere, Finch knew, someone was planning the next course. Episode 12, A Taste for Trouble. Part 3. Finch stood longer than necessary in the doorway of the Islington Bistro's kitchen. The place was silent now, stripped of its usual life. No clatter, no hiss of gas, no shouted orders ricocheting off tiled walls. Just the hum of refrigeration and the low, patient ticking of a clock above the pass. Kitchens were never meant to be quiet for long. When they were, it meant something had gone wrong. The steak sat where it had been left, cooling but still dignified. Finch resisted the urge to touch it. Medium rare, he said quietly. Cindy glanced at him. You didn't even look closely. I didn't have to. She folded her arms. That bother you? Yes. Good. They stepped aside as the Soko team continued their careful work. Finch's eyes traced the kitchen's lines, the alignment of pans, the sharpened knives returned to their places, the wiped-down counters. This was not a crime scene that spoke of haste or fear. It spoke of intention. Someone had cooked here who belonged here. 2 men, Cindy said. Both tied to food. Both found after cooking something properly. Not rushed. Not sloppy. And neither ate, Finch added. Which says what? That the cooking wasn't for them, Finch said. It was for someone else. Cindy's mouth tightened. Or it was for us. Later that afternoon, Finch found himself walking down a narrow street near Borough Market, coat buttoned, hat pulled low. The air smelled of yeast and frying oil, spices bleeding together in ways that made it impossible to separate one influence from another. Finch liked it here. It reminded him that London was never just one thing. He stopped outside a small butcher's shop wedged between a bakery and a wine merchant. The sign was old, hand-painted, R. Okoye, butcher. Inside, the counters gleamed. Cuts were labelled neatly. No nonsense. No gimmicks. Inspector Finch, a voice called from the back. You're early. Finch removed his hat. You always say that. Roland Okoye emerged wiping his hands on a cloth. He was tall, spare, his posture straight in a way that suggested discipline rather than stiffness. His hair was cropped close, his expression thoughtful. He had once been a chef before turning to butchery. Finch knew that much. Said it slowed his life down. Coffee? Roland asked. Yes. Roland poured without ceremony and slid the mug across the counter. Finch wrapped his hands around it, letting the warmth settle him. Isaac called, Roland said casually. Of course he did. He said you'd be coming. Did he say why? Roland's eyes sharpened slightly. He said you had a case that smelled wrong. Finch nodded. 2 dead men. Both tied to food. Both cooked before they died. Roland was silent for a long moment. Tell me about the meals, he said. Finch did. Roland listened without interruption, nodding once or twice, his gaze drifting to the counter as though imagining the scenes. When Finch finished, Roland took a slow breath. This isn't about killing, Roland said finally. It's about authorship. Finch looked at him. Explain. Cooking is one of the few crafts where the maker disappears into the product, Roland said. You don't see the cook when you eat. You just feel whether they cared. Whoever did this wants credit, but not recognition. They're hiding, Finch said. They're watching, Roland corrected. Seeing who understands. Finch felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold outside. You think they're watching me? Roland met his eyes. I think they know you cook. Finch said nothing. How many people know that? Roland asked. Very few. Then one of them is your killer, Roland said quietly. That night, Finch cooked again. He told himself it was habit. Routine. Something solid to end the day. But as he set out the ingredients, fish this time, potatoes, lemon, he felt the weight of unseen eyes. He cooked carefully. Not showily. The way he always did. When he sat down to eat, the radio murmured in the background. Finch chewed slowly, aware of each sensation. The texture. The balance. The satisfaction. Then he noticed it. A smell that didn't belong. He rose slowly and crossed to the bin. At the top sat a folded piece of paper, clean, deliberate. He unfolded it. A recipe. Not his handwriting. Simple. Minimalist. Familiar. He read it once, then again. At the bottom, written neatly. You have good instincts. Trust them. Finch closed his eyes. Somewhere, someone was studying him. And they were hungry. Episode 12, A Taste for Trouble. Part 4. Finch did not throw the recipe away. He stood at the counter for a long time, the paper resting flat beneath his fingertips as though it might warm to his touch. It was written neatly, confidently. No flourish. No wasted words. The margins were clean. The steps economical. Whoever had written it understood not just cooking, but restraint. That unsettled him more than the message itself. He folded the paper once, then again, and slipped it into the inside pocket of his coat. Only then did he wash the plate, dry it, and set it carefully in the cupboard. The kitchen was returned to order, but something had shifted. The room felt smaller now. Less private. Finch slept poorly again. By morning, the yard buzzed with a low, anxious energy that told Finch the news before anyone spoke it aloud. Cindy Lawless met him near the board, her jaw tight. There's been a third, she said. Finch did not ask where. Camden, she continued. Small family-run cafe. Owner's son found him in the back prep area. Food? Yes. Finch exhaled slowly through his nose. What kind? Cindy hesitated. Soup. Lentil. Still warm when they found him. That did it. Finch turned toward the board, scanning the growing constellation of names, addresses, times. 3 deaths. 3 kitchens. 3 meals cooked with care. This isn't random, Cindy said. It's not even symbolic anymore. It's a pattern. And patterns have rules, Finch said. Then tell me the rules, she snapped. Finch looked at her. Really looked. She was tired. Wired. Angry in the way that came from being a step behind something clever. They're choosing people who understand food as responsibility, he said. Not showmen. Providers. People who feed others. And why them? Because feeding people is intimate, Finch said. You earn trust without asking for it. Cindy's eyes narrowed. You think the killer wants that kind of trust? No, Finch said. I think they resent it. The cafe in Camden was chaos by comparison. Not sloppy, but lived in. Notes taped to the fridge. Mismatched containers. A radio left on low in the corner, still tuned to a station that had played through the night. The soup sat in a pot on the stove, lid askew, steam long since dissipated. Finch leaned over it and inhaled. Well? Cindy asked. It's good, Finch said quietly. She stared at him. You tasted it? No. I don't need to. She shook her head. You're impossible. Who was he? Finch asked. Samuel Ortiz, Cindy said. 48. Ran the place with his wife. No enemies we can see. No debts. No threats. Finch's gaze drifted to the wall, where a child's drawing was taped slightly crooked. A stick figure family holding hands beneath a sun that smiled too hard. He cooked for someone, Finch said. For himself? No, Finch replied. For comfort. Cindy swallowed. His wife says he always made soup when things got hard. Finch straightened slowly. Then this wasn't just murder, he said. It was desecration. They regrouped later in a quiet office away from the main floor. Isaac Mason arrived unannounced, coat still on, eyes already sharp. Roland Okoye followed 10 minutes later, calm as ever, his presence grounding. Cindy raised an eyebrow. Am I supposed to ask how you two got clearance? No, Finch said. You're supposed to listen. They laid the case out together, facts, instincts, culinary truths that didn't belong in police manuals but mattered all the same. This person knows food culture, Isaac said. Knows the unspoken rules. They're recreating something, Roland added. A hierarchy. They choose. They prepare. They leave the meal untouched. Cindy leaned forward. Why not eat? Isaac's mouth tightened. Because eating would make it about pleasure. This is about control. Finch felt the weight of it settle into place. They're cooking at us, he said. Roland nodded. And now they've crossed a line. How? Cindy asked. The recipe, Finch said. Both men turned to him. You received one, Roland said quietly. Not a question. Finch removed the folded paper and laid it on the table. Isaac read it first, his expression darkening. Roland followed, slower, more deliberate. This is personal, Isaac said. Yes, Finch agreed. And it means they're getting impatient. That night, Cindy insisted on driving Finch home. I don't like this, she said as they pulled up outside his building. You're too close. Closer than you are, Finch said. That's the point. She killed the engine but didn't get out. You don't scare easily, she said. But you're rattled. Finch considered denying it. He didn't. They know how I cook, he said. They know why. Cindy's voice softened. Then they've been watching you longer than we thought. He nodded once. Don't be alone tonight, she said. I live alone. You know what I mean. Finch paused, then nodded again. I'll keep the lights on. He didn't cook that evening. Instead, he sat at the small table with a glass of water and the recipe laid out before him. He read it again, this time critically. There it was, the mistake. A step out of order. Subtle. Something a careful cook wouldn't do. The killer was skilled, but not him. Finch smiled faintly for the first time in days. Outside, the city hummed, unaware that someone had just lost their edge. And somewhere nearby, Finch suspected, someone felt it. Episode 12, A Taste for Trouble. Part 5. Finch stood at Roland Okoye's butcher counter at 6:30 in the morning, watching him break down a side of lamb with the same calm precision Finch brought to a witness interview. There was nothing hurried about Roland's movements. The knife found its marks cleanly, separating muscle from bone without waste. Each cut had purpose. Finch liked watching him work. It reminded him that skill, when honest, was a kind of moral position. "You're staring," Roland said without looking up. "I'm learning," Finch replied. Roland snorted softly. "You don't come here to learn. You come here when something's gnawing at you." Finch didn't deny it. The shop smelled of cold metal and fresh meat, not unpleasant but bracing. Outside, the street was just beginning to wake, delivery lorries rumbling past, shopkeepers raising shutters with practiced groans. "You found something," Roland said. "Yes." "Good or bad?" "Both." Roland set the knife down carefully and turned to face him. "Then start talking." Finch told him about the recipe again. About the mistake. About the sense that the killer wasn't just leaving messages but listening now, waiting for a response. "You think they're expecting you to answer," Roland said. "I think they already believe I have," Finch replied. Roland leaned back against the counter, arms folded. "Then you need to decide whether you're going to disappoint them or lead them." "I was hoping you'd say that." Roland smiled thinly. "Of course you were." The meal Finch chose was deliberate. Not flashy. Not obscure. Something deeply familiar to anyone who'd spent time in kitchens where food was made to sustain rather than impress. A braised dish. Slow. Forgiving. One that required attention but not constant interference. "This," Roland said, studying Finch's list, "is comfort food." "Yes." "For someone who wants to control through ritual," Roland continued, "that's dangerous territory." "Why?" "Because comfort cuts both ways," Roland said. "It reminds people of things they didn't realize they missed." Finch nodded. "Which makes it a risk." "And you're willing to take it?" "Yes." Roland considered him for a long moment. "You always were." They gathered ingredients together, moving through the shop and nearby market with an ease born of years of mutual respect. Finch trusted Roland's judgment implicitly. Roland trusted Finch's instincts even when he didn't fully understand them. As they walked, Roland spoke quietly. "You know," he said, "when I first met you, I thought you were arrogant." Finch raised an eyebrow. "Only at first." "You listen too well," Roland said. "People like that usually think they're the smartest ones in the room." "And you discovered otherwise." "I discovered you cared whether you were right," Roland replied. "That's rarer." Finch absorbed that in silence. "You also never once treated me like a novelty," Roland added. "No assumptions. No explanations. Just respect." "That's because you earned it," Finch said simply. Roland smiled. "That's exactly why I'm in this with you." The plan was simple in structure and dangerous in execution. Finch would cook publicly, but quietly. Not a demonstration. Not an announcement. A meal shared within a small, controlled circle that the killer would be aware of but not invited into. "They'll know," Isaac Mason said later that afternoon, when the three of them met in the cafe after hours. "People like this always know." "That's the point," Finch replied. Cindy Lawless watched them from the corner, arms crossed, unimpressed. "You're using yourself as bait," she said. "I prefer to think of it as conversation," Finch replied. "With a murderer?" "Yes." Cindy exhaled sharply. "I don't like it." "No one asked you to," Finch said mildly. Roland stepped in. "He's right, but so are you. Which means we control everything else." "Such as?" Cindy asked. "Such as the guest list," Roland said. "And the menu." "And the exit routes," Isaac added. "And the timing." Cindy looked between them. "You lot have done this before." "Different stakes," Isaac said. "Same principles." Finch watched them both and felt something unexpected settle in his chest. Trust. The night of the meal arrived quietly. Finch's flat was transformed, not dramatically, but thoughtfully. Extra chairs borrowed. Table extended. Candles placed not for romance but for warmth. The kitchen was alive again, its earlier violation overwritten by purpose. Roland arrived first, carrying wine. Isaac followed, already surveying the space like a general assessing terrain. Cindy arrived last, eyes sharp, coat still on. "You look like you're hosting a dinner party," she said. "I am," Finch replied. "Of sorts." They ate slowly. Talk stayed light at first. Food. Work. Old stories that had been polished smooth by repetition. Finch watched their faces as they ate, noting reactions without appearing to. Halfway through the main course, the knock came. 3 sharp raps. No hesitation. Cindy's hand moved toward her jacket. "Wait," Finch said softly. He rose and opened the door. A man stood there, neatly dressed, unremarkable in every way that mattered. His smile was polite. His eyes were not. "I believe I'm late," the man said. Finch met his gaze. "You weren't invited." The man's smile widened. "And yet you cooked." Behind Finch, Roland and Isaac stood, flanking him without a word. The man's eyes flicked to the table. To the plates. To the food. "Good instincts," he said. Finch felt the trap begin to close. Episode 12, A Taste for Trouble. Part 6. The man did not step inside until Finch stepped back. That told Finch everything he needed to know. Confidence, yes, but also permission. The man needed the ritual to be intact. Needed the host to host. "Mind the coat rack," Finch said quietly, gesturing aside. The man smiled, almost relieved. He removed his coat with care and hung it neatly. His shoes were polished but sensible. Nothing about him asked to be remembered. Roland noticed that too. "Sit," Finch said, indicating the chair opposite him. The man obeyed. Cindy stayed standing, close enough to intervene, far enough not to disrupt the illusion. Isaac leaned casually against the counter, arms folded, eyes sharp. Roland remained still, unreadable. The table waited between them. "You knew I'd come," the man said, picking up his fork. He didn't eat yet. He just held it. "I hoped you would," Finch replied. "That's not the same." "No," Finch agreed. "Hope is messier." The man's eyes flicked briefly to the dish in front of him. The braise glistened, steam curling upward in soft, fragrant ribbons. "You changed the recipe," he said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because yours was almost right," Finch said. "But not quite." That did it. The man's smile tightened, not anger, not fear, but irritation. A craftsman corrected. Roland watched him closely now. "You cooked like someone who learned technique but never patience," Finch continued. "You rush one step. You hurry when you should wait." The man laughed softly. "You think that's what this is about?" "I think that's what you think this is about," Finch said. "Mastery. Control. Being seen." The fork trembled, just barely. "You chose people who fed others," Finch said. "Not stars. Not critics. People who sustained. You resented them." "I respected them," the man snapped. "No," Roland said calmly, speaking for the first time. "You studied them." "That's different." The man turned toward him, eyes narrowing. "And you are?" "Someone who knows the difference," Roland replied. Silence pressed in. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere, a radio played faintly through a neighbor's wall. "You watched me," Finch said. "Learned my habits. My cooking. Why I cook." The man swallowed. "You cook to make sense of things?" "Yes." "And you think that makes you better?" "No," Finch said. "It makes me honest." The man stood abruptly. Cindy moved. Roland was faster. He stepped into the man's space, not aggressively, not threateningly, just enough to block the path. His voice remained level. "Sit down." The man hesitated. Roland didn't blink. Slowly, the man sat down. "You wanted me to eat," the man said, quieter now. "To complete it." "No," Finch said. "I wanted you to taste." He slid the plate closer. The man stared at it, breathing shallowly. Then, finally, he took a bite. Something broke behind his eyes. He chewed. Swallowed. His shoulders sagged. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he whispered. "That's what they all say," Cindy replied. "No," Finch said. "He means it." The man nodded weakly. It was supposed to be correction, showing them what they'd forgotten. "You killed them," Cindy said flatly. "I honored them," the man insisted. "I cooked for them. Properly. I gave them a final meal." "You took their choice," Roland said. "That's not honor." Tears welled, uninvited. "I just wanted someone to notice," the man said. Finch leaned forward. "I noticed." The man looked up, startled. "And now it's over," Finch said. "Because this ends when you stop pretending food absolves you." Sirens sounded faintly in the distance, already called, already on their way. The man nodded once, defeated. "I ruined it," he murmured. "Yes," Finch said gently. "You did." Later, after the arrest, the flat felt larger again. The plates were cleared. The candles extinguished. The kitchen returned to its quiet hum, but this time without violation. Cindy lingered near the door. "You all right?" she asked. "Yes." "That was risky." "Yes." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You were good." "Thank you." She left without ceremony. Isaac followed, clapping Finch once on the shoulder. "Still don't overcook." "I never do." That left Roland. He stayed behind, helping Finch wash up. No rush. No words until they were needed. "You did something tonight," Roland said finally. "Yes." "You let yourself be seen." Finch dried his hands. "I trusted the room." Roland smiled faintly. "You chose your table well." They stood in silence a moment longer. "You'll cook again," Roland said. "Yes." "And you'll remember why." "Yes." Roland nodded. "Good. Because this city needs men who know when to feed and when to stop." He left quietly. Finch stood alone in the kitchen. He folded the killer's recipe one last time, then placed it in the bin and covered it with peelings and paper and the ordinary refuse of a life lived. Tomorrow, he would cook something simple. And it would be enough.